Carl Kivler, singer of Strength for a Reason.
Ed Bonja, formerly Chamber and Strength for a Reason.
Jack Surgery, guitar, Strength for a Reason.
Back in, I would say about, I guess it was about 93, 94. There was a place, LS Skaterama, in our town, and I seen a couple bands there. You know, I really didn't know much about it. It was like the Undead, and there's a couple other bands that played. Who else was on that show? You remember? Oh, Mucky Pup. That's what it was. It all comes back to you because I just seen them last year at Tsunami Fest prior year, and I was talking to the guys, and I said it's crazy. You know, I went there. I kind of didn't understand it. You know, people were going crazy. It was a good time. Everybody was having fun. You know, and I'm just like, wow, this is pretty neat. And then a few years later, you know, we found a place called Cece's in Music, and then it was all over. You'd go there, it was like a big family. You'd go there, everybody cheered your name, and then that's when I really started learning about real hardcore bands. But then I seen a band called Warzone from New York City, and the guy was the coolest. You know, because I went to rock shows before, like I seen Pantera and like stuff like that, but it wasn't the same. I mean, this guy came out in the crowd, handed out demos, talked to everybody, and then I got lucky enough to see him probably about 7 months later, and I knew every word. I read that demo, and then that was it for me, man. It just lit a fire in me. And then I just started seeing other bands, you know, 25 to Life, Fury of 5, you know, VOD. I mean, it was just on and on. Hatebreed, I mean, Downset. I mean, every band that I liked at that time seemed to come through there. Biohazard. And then it just changed my life. It made me what I am today, you know. I made the best friends I could ever have.
Well, in Hazleton, we really didn't have any big venues or anything, so there was a lot of DIY shows. I think the first actual hardcore show I saw was Turmoil played. A guy opened up a club, I swear it was open for a month, and Turmoil played with a couple other hardcore bands. And prior to that, you know, I've heard hardcore. My sister is a lot older than me, and she used to, when I was in 4th grade and stuff, she used to give me tapes, bands she didn't like, you know, Crucial Youth and Minor Threat and stuff, and you know, I just used to play them. So when I finally got out to see what it was all about, you know, here's this little kid going to shows, and I was just blown away. And after that, I was just searching for shows and always going. And that just led, I guess, you know, going up to Cece's and stuff, and finally getting to see the, you know, the bands from around the country.
And there was other DIY places too, like the Columbia Hose House. You know what I mean? There was just, once they opened the door and let you in, it's just amazing what you see. I mean, there was just band after band after band that you never realize there's a whole other world. You know, you're always into what's on the radio or who tells you, you know, at the time MTV actually played music, you know. Then you start seeing Headbangers Ball, and then you see these bands that play on MTV, which was actually had Headbangers Ball at the time, actually played music, and they were actually playing in your neighborhood, and you would never know about it, you know. It was awesome.
For me, kind of the same thing that Carl said. I came from the same town, about 3 houses down from him on the other street. So, yeah, for me, it just started with, you know, getting handy tapes, Minor Threat, Sick It All, check this out, you know, listening to this music like that, reading the lyrics, saying, wow, you know, this is awesome, this is pretty cool, you know. My first show was 1991, LS Skaterama, like Carl said, Vision played. I think the guys in Side Over Option, they played the same show. So, you know, at first, my friends were like, oh, we're going to go to a show, and I'm like, oh man, you know, what's all this about? And they're, oh, there's a pit, you know, people dancing, punch people in the face. I'm like, oh my God, no. And I'm all scared, I don't want to go. But then, you know, finally I got to the show, and it was just cool, you know, like all the kids there, you're instantly like a part of the family, you felt like, you know. And then, you know, like Carl said, Cece's was our own home, away from home. You know,
we lived there pretty much.
You pull in every weekend, your friends, as soon as you pull in the parking lot, everybody just be cheering in the parking lot, yeah, you know. It was awesome, you know, a lot of friends, a lot of things. You know.
Jack said our first show was 91. I'm even cooler than I thought. Yeah. No, I'm just teasing.
So what's the origin of Strength for a Reason?
Back in, I guess it was 96.
96.
Back in 1996, like I said, from going to Cece's all the time, we seen a band called Mushmouth. And, you know, we quickly became friends because we're all pretty much the same thing. And we were talking in the back, and I'm like, yeah, I said, playing in a band seems pretty cool, man. I said, I love it. I come and he goes, we see you here all the time, you're always singing along. He's like, why don't we just start a side project and, do something? And I'm like, I was scared. I'm like, man, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can, you know what I mean? I know you guys do it. I said, I don't know if I can do it. So Chris Mahmood invited me down to his house. He's like, we're going to write 2 songs. We're going to have you come down and sing some stuff. So I went home with my pen and my paper, and I'm just like a nervous wreck. So I got some stuff together. We did the intro, Strength for a Reason, which was pretty simplistic. So, and then I did a song called Never Knew. And I went over to Chris's house. You'll probably talk to him later. They call him Chris Nace now, Chris Dalmas. And he helped me with a little bit of lyrics, put them together. And I went there and I gave it all I could, you know what I mean? And everything went smooth. And then they're like, well, we have a show with Earth Crisis, which was at the time one of the biggest bands in hardcore, I thought. And I'm just like, he's like, we're going to play the show and we want you to come up there and do them 2 songs. We like the way they sound. And I'm just like, oh man. I'm outside before they played and I'm just pacing, just going over the songs in my head. I'm just nervous as it gets. And then I just remember going up there and hearing the music and just yelling, and it was just, from that moment, I'm just like, this is for me. Nobody knew the stuff at the time, but they wrote good music, so everybody just started dancing around and having a good time. And then people coming up to you like friends and other people that you never met before saying, oh man, that was pretty good. And then from there, I'm just like, I gotta keep this going. And them guys were so busy at the time, they were always playing, that I talked to Jack, and at the time it was Chris's brother Dominic, and Jotham Oliver. He plays in some bands. I don't know if you ever heard of him, Wisdom in Chains, Crutch. We went from there and we got a couple songs together. Jotham was on the drums, it was Jack on guitar, and Chris's brother Dominic, he was on the bass. And we went up there, we wrote 2 more songs, we had 4 songs, and then it just kept on growing from there. We just kept on going. And as we got more serious, Jotham joined Mushmouth for a little while. They switched their name out to him. They were playing a little more. We ended up talking to Eddie, this boy right here. And he's what really kept it going. He already had a band. We knew we played in bands before, and like I said, we just kept on growing from there. Next thing we know, we're going on stage and people are learning the lyrics. I always felt like if there was 5 of my friends or 6 of my friends knew the words and sang along, I'm like, this is awesome. And then once you see people that you never met before learning the words, and every show's getting bigger and bigger, and I'm just like, this is crazy. I don't believe it, you know what I mean?
Chamber. Well, I met a couple guys from Hazleton. 2 guys were into metal, but they were kind of influenced by bands like, Overcast and stuff like that, more like metalcore. I was more into punk and the straight up hardcore. So I know there was, Jim Thorpe and everything had, hardcore, and up in Wilkes-Barre, but we were trying to create our own, scene down there. So we just, basically got together and tried to blend the styles. So it was kind of like metalcore back then, people used to call it, If I hear it now, I'm just like, oh yeah, it was just hardcore. But we, that's where we just started going. We never even got to release, like a full-length CD. It was kind of short-lived, but the time we did, we used to play around Pennsylvania and everything. Got to meet all the bigger hardcore bands and stuff. After, I was playing in Chamber, it kind of started dying out, and these guys called me,
and like I said, we met.
You gotta come drum for us,
Yeah, we met sort of through CCs and going to, we'd go to Hazleton and we would just meet other people, and it was just, we met him right off the bat, we clicked. We're just like, he goes to every show, we go to every show, we're just gonna do this. And once we did our first demo, you do a 4-song demo, we did it in '97, and it was just, from there we handed out at every show, and it was just, we were proud of it, it was just something that we knew we wanted to do it. We still do it to today, so I'll tell you how much we loved it. Yeah, sometimes I think we get the raw end of the stick with that, but I grew up on New York hardcore. I knew there was bands from other places, you know what I mean? But that's just the stuff that stuck to me, because they always sang about the streets and everyday life. I kind of related to what they said. But like I said, to this day, if anybody comes through PA, they say it's always one of their favorite places to play. We're kind of stuck in the middle of everything. Not only Philadelphia, but we have, Nanticoke, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. It's like everybody comes together in one scene. We all travel to Philly, we all travel to New York, but we know we have our own scene here. If you play a show anywhere around here, you know there's always gonna be kids because the scene is great. And there's so many good bands. Like I said, I think a few years back, maybe that was more like they only said about them places. But I mean, now I think Pennsylvania is definitely on the map. I mean, if you know people are coming through, they're gonna say, I definitely want to show in Pennsylvania.
I don't know, I think what was always great about Pennsylvania hardcore, like I grew up and listening to New York, you know, hardcore and Jersey hardcore. I think it meshed a lot of different styles of music together. You know, you can hear anything from like, you know, the metal end to the punk rock end, hardcore, and it was never just like, oh, here's tough guy hardcore from here. Here's this show that had a more like punky sound, you know?
Or Youth Crew.
Yeah, or Youth Crew or anything. I think it was just like, you know,
A great mix. It was sort of like New York or DC or whatever, because we had all styles of music.
Yeah,
in
I
one
think
spot.
we actually got influences from the surrounding areas,
Yeah.
from all the bands, you know? To this day, I listen to hardcore from all over the world. I still believe Pennsylvania. I mean, I know I'm from here, but just listen to so many bands from all over. I think we have like one of the greatest hardcore scenes in the world. So.
And I just think from, you know, back then, it's the, you know, DC, Boston, New York City, things like that. I mean, those, when I was young, man, Slapshot, Boston, like it's just, those were the big main areas. So, you know, that's granted where people are gonna talk from, but like Carl said, you know, today and throughout the years, I mean, there's been a lot of PA bands that have come through that put Pennsylvania on the map. So, you know, I think that Pennsylvania should be on that list.
I mean, you definitely want to go to New York and play. You want to go to all the places. Like the first time we played CBGB's in New York City was like, it felt like an accomplishment, you know what I mean? It was just like something, because you knew that's where it grew up. I mean, I respect every band from every place, you know, but I don't think it's where you're from. I think it's the music you play and if you put your heart into it.
I think that's inevitable, you know, like it's the way the style of music, the aggression, you know, the pit, you know, somebody's gonna get hit, you're gonna have the guy that's gonna get mad, you're gonna have, you know, the fight, but, you know, through all that, you have the people that step in that, you know, care about the scene, that take care of the situation and move people out and calm it down, you know, it's not like there's ever a melee and people are getting just pummeled. I mean, it just stops, you know.
You kind of police yourself.
People police.
I think security sometimes it shows is the worst thing you could possibly have, because if they don't know what's going on, if you don't have the right security, they're probably 90% of the problem. If I go to a regular hardcore show, if there's ever a fight, it's usually broken up in 30 seconds. People talk it over, you know, say, okay, man, this ain't the place to fight, but I mean, sometimes fights have to happen. I mean, if there's a real problem, like, you know, if they're racist, whatever, you know, you don't tolerate that stuff, you don't want it around. But other than that, I mean, I think you should fight to keep your scene going, not fight each other.
You know, when I started, Carl would probably be the same way, and probably Ed. You know, you had LS, CC's obviously, you know, Columbia, Host House, when Wilkes-Barre, Redono's, Captain Metropolis. They all had shows. More recently, within the
What was
past
that place?
few
Was there a
years,
place like the Factory too? They had
Yeah.
some shows. I mean, there was so many.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, the factory.
it's
Shelton was there as a
Yeah.
That was a good show.
Any place that you can find
Yeah, man,
a
it's
show
cool.
on, even if it's in the back of a pizzeria.
yeah. People put a show there. I mean, if you, like I said, if you book some bands, like that's what's great about it. If you book bands,
Yeah.
kids will come.
Yeah.
I mean, that's always. And then they had a home base.
West Side
They started
Park.
going. Yeah, West Side Park and Nannyville.
Hey, any place, you know?
Yeah, we booked some shows there for the first time when we were younger, and one of our friend Dan Mills singing in a band Cold World, and he sang in Magnus and stuff, and he started booking shows with us in Nannycoke. We got so many good bands, and back then it was crazy because we'd write letters. There was no such thing as a computer. We'd write letters. They'd send us demos. We'd write them a letter back, say, "Will you come to our town?" You know what I mean? I can remember even when our band first started, we'd be driving. We had payphones, and our merch guy, Chris, one of my best friends, had a pager, and they'd page us when we were close, and we'd go and hurry up and use the payphone. It was much more face-to-face back then, you know, which I thought was great, you know, because you actually got to test somebody's character instead of just typing to them over the computer. I don't know. I mean, for me, I understand you grow up, in a sense, But hardcore, once it's in you, to me, it's burned in me. Like, it's something that I love. I mean, I understand you can't go to every show. I mean, it's just a fact of life. I mean, Jack got 2 children, 2 kids, and, you know, I'm married, I have a family. I mean, you understand the whole aspect of it, but, like, I don't understand how a band that you grew up on your whole life, and then all of a sudden, they're playing down the street, and you're not gonna go. It's like, I don't care if you stand in the back and sing along. I mean, I understand you don't have to get crazy anymore, but something that you said you loved and you just give up on it, to me is, that's why they invented the word sellout. I mean, I guess that's what it is.
Yeah, if you love the music, you know, even, you know, people get older, they have families and stuff, like you said. You know, I can't make it out to every show, you know, at work and everything, but I will always love the music. You know, I'll be 60, 70 years old, just, you know, listen to if a band's around that I can make it, you know, you just go out and, you know, support them and everything. It's a good feeling, you know, getting out there.
We were in Connecticut and there was a guy, and he came out to see us. We were playing with a bunch of bands, you know what I mean, a bunch of hardcore bands. It was actually Stillborn Fest. It was some metal bands, hardcore and stuff. And there was this guy up front, and he was like 65 years old. And, you know, he's yelling all kind of lyrics and words and stuff. And later on after the show, he came over and talked to me and Jack. And I mean, the things that you've seen and all the bands he really knew, you're just like, wow, this guy's been in it forever. And he still loves it, he still lives it, he breathes it. He goes to all the shows. And it was just great to, like, he looked like a normal guy. You would think he was, you know, you would think he was your dad, you know, or your grandfather or whatever. But he was in it. And that's what he told me. And he said, and it stuck to me, he goes, you're in it for life, you know what I mean? It's inside you, and it's just cool. Remember that day? It was great.
Yeah, we were up to about 25 minutes. I definitely don't want to keep putting the other guys up, but you guys deserve more time. But it's going to go great across. Anything you guys want to add, say anything, it's free reign, go for it.
I just want to say thanks to you guys, Lauren, for doing it. It's great that somebody's actually paying attention to the Pennsylvania scene, wants to get it out on the map through the history of it, you know, get the stories out from people that have lived it, been around, you know, where it's been, also interviewing new guys, where it's at, you know.
It's nice to know, you know, even like the younger kids into it, you know, you always want to find out, you know, where it started, how it happened, you know, and then, you know, how it progressed and everything, and it takes things like this. You know, some people just jump into the scene and don't really know, you know, where these bands came from, the history, the shows, you know. This is like possibly like the best thing you can do for Pennsylvania hardcore.
It could be driving past one of the most iconic clubs in the area that they shut down and they would never know it.
Wouldn't even know.
You know, what the dilapidated building there was like the best club ever.
But the thing that I have to add is, like, everybody does want to know the past. I mean, the past is great. But I mean, there is so many great bands out now in the future, you know what I mean? I always say, don't always just go by just because a band's older or younger or whatever. Pay attention to all the bands, give them a chance. And like I said, open the door to hardcore and it'll change your life. It made me what I am today, and like I said, it's priceless. It's definitely priceless.